In the summer of 2019, Arsenal offered Crystal Palace £40 million for Wilfried Zaha. The figure fell short of the South London club's valuation, and so they turned down the offer. By the end of the window, Arsenal had brought in Nicolas Pepe for a fee of around £72 million, and Zaha has remained with Palace ever since. But should Palace have sold Zaha back when his stock was higher? Across the last 10 years of Crystal Palace's transfer business, they have not made a profit in the transfer market. Over that time, there's only been one season where the club made more money in player sales than they spent in acquiring new talent. That was the summer of 2019 when they sold fullback Aaron Wan-Bissaka to Manchester United for €55 million. Take that period as a whole and Palace have spent €275 million more than they have recouped. Which is to say that there's been a €27 million discrepancy between incomings and outgoings on average each season over that 10-year period. Now, against this context, the non-sale of Wilfried Zaha seems to lessen in scale. Had Zaha been sold for around £40 million, the gap between Palace's transfers in and out still would have remained at around 50% outlay. Even if they had managed to accrue the £72 million that Arsenal eventually paid for Pepe, it would have barely moved the needle for their overall transfer finances. And it's at this point that the Wilfried Zaha conundrum comes into its sharpest relief. In the short term, it's clearly worth the while of the Palace decision makers to raise the question, how much is Zaha worth to us as a club in the short term? Now, in the 2019-20 season, Crystal Palace finished 14th and received around £115 million in Premier League funds as a result of their league position. This is only £15 million more than Watford, who got relegated that season. But it's worth noting that in 2018, Deloitte estimated the cost of relegation to the relegated sides to run to approximately £50 million in Premier League distributions alone. That figure includes parachute payments, but it doesn't take into account the external revenue benefits that being a Premier League club can bring. On face value then, you could make the argument that £40 million for Zaha is not offset by the £50 million on average that you benefit from staying in the Premier League for another season. And if you consider that Wilf Zaha has been a key player for Palace in all 4 seasons following that summer, up to the point at which his contract is set to expire this summer, you could make an argument that the value of his contract for Palace has far exceeded the £72 million plus wages that Arsenal spent on Nicolas Pepe. But of course, every short-term strategy comes at the expense of the long-term strategy. And this could have potentially come back to bite Crystal Palace in the summer of 2021. That was the window where the club had to let 8 senior players go on free transfers, including some who'd picked up well over 1,000 minutes in the prior season. Players such as Andros Townsend, Patrick Van Aanholt, Scott Dan and Gary Cahill. Now, in the end, under the direction of sporting director Dougie Freedman, Palace were able to navigate this issue by bringing in a number of exciting young players for relatively low fees. Mark Guéhi and Michael Olise had impressed in the Championship the season before, as had Conor Gallagher and Joachim Andersen in their loan spells in the Premier League. Bringing in Odsonne Edouard and signing Jean-Philippe Mateta to a full contract after his loan spell at Selhurst Park the season before, Freedman also added Will Hughes from recently relegated Watford, and the squad achieved a better demographic profile. But even still, there was a risk in approaching squad management in this manner. And at the time, there was expectation that new manager Patrick Vieira could struggle to keep Palace out of the relegation zone. In the event, Palace survived comfortably, finishing in 12th place with Zaha top scoring with 14 goals. He also scored a highly useful 7 times in 22-23 as Palace again survived comfortably. But that shouldn't trick you into thinking that the Wilfried Zaha conundrum is solved. With the squad looking healthier, Dougie Freedman has to decide whether to continue with the approach of extracting footballing value from his best players at the club, as has been the case with Zaha, or avoiding that familiar conundrum, selling players at the peak of their value and reinvesting the money. As things stand, Mark Guéhi and Michael Olise are the obvious candidates with resale potential. Both could be sold for a healthy profit. But there is also a risk involved with this approach. Supporters of Crystal Palace may point back to the years of service that Zaha has given the club as proof that not selling a talismanic player has kept them in the Premier League. They might also reason that selling players for high figures doesn't guarantee that quality replacements can be found, or that without European football, a club of Palace's size can't always attract players with such potential. Both are well-reasoned points, but then that illustrates the difficulty of the situation and the many challenges presented by both sides of the Wilfried Zaha conundrum, and the many clubs beyond just Palace who face it. If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.